we got 9:32, that's the leader, and there really is a scrap for second place further back in the field. 3:06, George Polly, in fact, has just got himself past 88. There's 3:06 on the outside. He's just shot past the car that's sitting on his tail, which is 88, Peter Grimer. And that's George Polly now, comes from Heathfield down in Sussex. Again, a very experienced driver, been around the raceway many, many years. Won this World Championship back in 1976 and hasn't really been in at the death in recent years, and now could be back in with a good chance. So it's 3:06, George Polly in second place. 88 is now third rather, Peter Grimer. 2:42, Peter Stevens is there, and then comes 87, John Stone behind him. There's Peter Grimer, and the yellow car right behind him there, that's Peter Stevens. 2:42, Pete Stevens. Well, now, Davy Evans put up a very good time in practice. He started on the second row of the grid on the inside. He had a practice time of 15.86 seconds. Only, what, 1.5 hundredths of a second behind the fastest time. So the car certainly is capable of doing the speed, provided it can last and he can keep himself out of trouble. And, of course, doesn't do anything silly like pushing in the closing stages of the race, which is what happened last year and which was the item that took the race away from him. So there is the second place man, 3:06, George Polly. Going past some of the slower back markers, picking them off one at a time. Now there's 3:06, George Polly in the second place. There's 9:32, Davy Evans, that's the leader. And let's go back and see if we can see George Polly, and there's George Polly coming down the straight. That's a back marker. Through they come. The lead is really quite considerable. The rest of the field are some way back. So it's 9:32. 3:06 is now almost half a lap, in fact, behind. Now, George Polly has really got to start thinking in terms of getting a bit of extra speed on, because he's got to close the gap. Time is ticking away. We've got 52 laps are now gone, so we've got 23 laps left. George Polly looks to me rather as if there's a little bit of bodywork problem there. As the car leans over towards the outside, something is just rubbing on that tyre. I don't think it's too serious, but we are seeing a little puff of smoke. But this is the man he's got to catch. 9:32, Davy Evans. So that's the man who's in the lead, and the man who's got to catch him is this one, 3:06, George Polly, and there's a little bit of smoke each time the car leans over. I think probably the spats are just catching there, where the wheel arch is flared out above the tyre. It's just catching as the car leans as it corners. It doesn't look too serious, but any luck, it should last all right. 2:42, Pete Stevens is in third place, and now gaining on George Polly. There they are, that's the second and third together. 3:06, George Polly, and just behind him, you'll see his nose poking in a moment. There he is, that's the man who's third. The European champion, national champion, and British and English champion. 2:42, Pete Stevens. This is the battle for second place, and George Polly's going to have some problems in just a moment or two when Pete Stevens really begins to turn it on. So 9:32, Davy Evans is still out in front and still clear. These two are scrapping for the second place. 88, Peter Grimer is still there in fourth. 87, John Stone is next. 156, Stu Jackson comes next. Then it's 112, John Edwards. And then it's 8, a little bit further back, Paul Grimer. So those are the places, and as we look at the lap sheet, 58 of these 75 laps are now gone. And at the moment, it's looking very strongly as if it's going to be a repeat win for Northern Ireland. Because 9:32, Davy Evans is a long way clear in front, and the pair at the back of that group are chasing to catch him. Big bunch of back markers there that these two have got to pass if they're going to get at the leader. And of course, Davy Evans in 9:32 has done the right thing. He's got half a dozen or more slower back marker cars and put them between him and these two who are chasing. Now, George Polly won't be easy to pass for Pete Stevens in that yellow car, 2:42, sitting on his tail. Pete Stevens will have to use all his skill, but maybe an opportunity will come, a slight misjudgment as little gaps open and close. You've got to make a decision. Are you going to go on the outside, or are you going to go for a gap on the inside? And if the gap closes and you've made the wrong decision, then you could be in trouble. In fact, there was a gap. George Polly went for the outside, and that left it open on the inside. Now, the question here is, will the inside line of cars move ahead, letting Pete Stevens through, or will a gap appear to allow George Polly to go by on the outside? It's a bit of a gamble, and it hasn't paid off for George Polly, because Pete Stevens has now nipped through to take up second place. So there we are, that's the scrap for second place. George Polly on the inside in 3:06, and Pete Stevens on the outside in 2:42. 64 laps gone. And still, it's the Irishman in front in 9:32, Davy Evans. So this is the battle for the second place. The man who's in front is still Davy Evans in 9:32 in his Vauxhall Chevette, with these two escorts chasing him. So Davy Evans, the leader, 9:32, some way clear. And he is something like 50 or 60 yards clear of the rest of the field. That's the leader just gone through, the second of those two, and here comes the rest of the pack. There's the back markers, and the scrap for second place is at the back of that pile. And there's 2:42. Pete Stevens. So it's 9:32. Pete Stevens has now dropped right back, leaving 3:06 clear back in the second place. While we were looking at the leader, Pete Stevens got himself into trouble and has now dropped back. So it's with 68 of the 75 laps now gone, it is 9:32 Davy Evans, 3:06 George Polly is second. 1:56 Stuart Jackson has now moved up into third place. 88 Peter Grimer is next, followed by 87 John Stone, and then it's 1:12 John Edwards. So as we come now towards the closing stages of this one, with 70 laps coming up, it's still 9:32. Davy Evans of Northern Ireland in the lead. This man is about 60 yards behind in second place, 3:06 George Polly. And George Polly is under pressure from 1:56 Stu Jackson. In fact, George Polly has got problems further back, and this man here, 1:56 Stuart Jackson, has just gone past him to move up into second place, and Stu Jackson's going like a train, but I don't think he's going to have a chance at all of catching Davy Evans in 9:32. But there's George Polly, that's the end of the race for him. So we've seen Barry Lee and George Polly go out, but the man out in front who's now looking set to win this is 9:32. There's just 3 more laps to go now, 9:32, and it's 1:56 Stuart Jackson who is in second place. 88 Peter Grimer is third, 87 John Stone is fourth, 2:42 is now back in fifth place, and 1:12 John Edwards is in sixth. That's 2 more to go. Now the Irishman, after the disappointment of last year, must be really feeling marvellous now. He must realise that the opposition are a long way behind. He can see, in fact, by looking across the track, as he comes through now to take the 1 lap marker, he can look right across the track and see that 1:56 is almost half a lap behind him, and he can be well clear. That's the man who's chasing in second place, but inside the final lap now, this is the man who for Northern Ireland is now going to do what he couldn't do last year and become the world champion. 9:32 Davy Evans is the Motorquip Hot Rod champion of the world for 1982. A great driver, convincing men. Coming round here now to cross the line in second place is car number 1:56 Stuart Jackson. 88 Peter Grimer comes across the line in third place. 87 John Stone is fourth. In fifth place is 2:42 Pete Stevens. But that's the man. You can see how pleased he is. He put up a very good time on the time trials this morning to give himself inside position on the second row of the grid. And last year, of course, he thought he had done it then. And on the final lap, he tried to overtake Ormond Christie leant on him as he went past, went into the lead, and then was docked one place and penalised and had to be content with second place. But he's done it this year, a convincing win. He's done very, very well indeed, and you can see now the supporters there are really very pleased to congratulate him. So a convincing win, a great drive from car number 932 in the Chevette. That's Davy Evans of Northern Ireland. He is the new hot rod champion of the world. The man who came home in second place from the Midlands was car number 156, Stuart Jackson, and the third place was car number 88, Peter Grimer.